How did a once introverted programmer go from coding in a cubicle to leading an iconic American brand? Well, that's exactly what Omaha Steaks CEO Nate Rempe did. And along with CEO Forum Group founder Robert Reiss, they're your inside source for magical hacks that will transform the way you command a room, command your career, and maybe even command a company. Get ready. This is Brain of Command.
Okay, hi, this is Robert Reiss with Nate Rempe, and we have a special guest today who you will meet from the one and only Ethan Allen, the CEO. But our topic today, the leadership hack, is on fiscally responsible. And Nate, it's not just cutting costs, but it's so much more. It's really about your personal brand, and that's what people don't realize about being fiscally responsible.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. It is really the personal brand is the key there. It's not just about being good with money. You know, lots of leaders can cut costs or deliver return on investment, but they never reap the reputational benefits. And that's the difference in doing and being known for doing. So when you negotiate a vendor contract, that saves the company $100,000, you can't just file it away and move on. You need to take intentional action, sharing the outcome with the right stakeholders, framing it as disciplined resource stewardship, and then connecting it back to organizational goals. And then you're building your brand at that point. People see it, they hear about it, and that leads to access to more resources and so on and so forth.
Now, I want to tell you, your guest for today, it's something unique because Nate, as you know, is the first non-family member of Omaha Steaks in over 100 years. And our guest is also the first non-family member of an iconic brand, Ethan Allen, that everyone knows. And Farooq Kathwari has been CEO. He's led the company since 1988. That's almost 40 years. And it's really, as you know, it's been the number one premium furniture retailer every year. And he also has won so many awards, like the Outstanding American by Choice Award. Only one person in America wins this. He's done so much more than just lead a great company. But one thing that's always been at the core of who you are, Farooq, is about being fiscally responsible. And for 40 years of leading a company, every year has been profitable. You had 90% debt at one point, which you completely paid off. But you take these actions, and how do these impact your personal brand? And how does it cascade down to the organization, the fiscal responsibility?
Well, first of all, it's really a great pleasure to be on this program. I've been very fortunate in the sense that I always felt as a captain of a team. When I was very young, I didn't study much, but I played sports. I was the captain of a cricket team when I was only 8 or 10 years old. When I was studying back in the mountains of Kashmir, I was studying English literature, political science, but I was mostly playing sports. And sports was mostly cricket. And cricket is a game where you have to manage a team. Each of the matches that we had lasted 3 days. Because of that, I couldn't study anything serious like science or engineering, so I studied English literature and political science. So it's tremendously important what your background is. So my background was developing a team. And when you have a team, fiscal responsibility comes with developing a team. If you don't have a team, you can't just talk of fiscal responsibility without creating a great team. So having a great team and making sure that team operates well, that has really been part of my background and has helped me throughout my career.
So Farooq, what's the difference though between being fiscally responsible and actually building a personal brand around that?
You've got to think of the business as your business. You've got to think of the fact that how you spend money. I have a philosophy that every dollar is important. And that philosophy has to get across to all our associates. Now, we have a unique model. It's a vertically integrated model in which we go from a concept of idea to development of product, to manufacturing, to national logistics, to retail, to retail logistics, marketing, merchandising. So we are a vertically integrated company. So when you're talking fiscally responsible, you have to be responsible in every area of the business.
Right.
And to do that, you have to create a culture. You've got to create a culture where everybody thinks about every dollar they spend as if it's their own. Every one of our associates is extremely responsible in thinking that every dollar they're spending is something as if it's their own. But you've got to create that culture. And it starts obviously with leadership.
You have so many people who are truly creative and they're creating all the interiors and the furnitures. How does the fiscal responsibility tie in? Because usually you think that with creative people, it's not going to be there, but somehow it seems to be the brand, that the brand is all about integrity, and somehow the fiscal responsibility ties into what Ethan Allen is, which is great quality.
No, I think that's a very important issue because of the fact fiscal responsibility does not mean that you're not going to spend in the areas that you need to spend.
That's
Fiscal
right.
responsibility means that you have to be extremely cautious, careful where you spend, but you've got to spend. We are a vertically integrated company. We have to spend for manufacturing. We are in manufacturing. And today, manufacturing, especially in North America, which is what we have, 75% of our manufacturing is managed by us in North America. So when you talk of fiscal responsibility, investing in manufacturing is tremendously important. And today, manufacturing, as every element of our business, means technology. Investment in technology is critical. So we have been able to do this in the state of Vermont, in North Carolina. Then we went about 20 years back to southern Mexico. Then we went to Honduras. But today, we have 30 to 35% less persons, but it's technology that has made the difference. So we invest a great deal, but you've got to be fiscally responsible how you invest.
I want to ask Nate. So Nate, you're a technology guy by trade. What do you think of what Farooq is saying about technology, fiscal responsibility, innovation, all of those? How does this tie in, and how does this relate to your personal brand?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It really is about investing, not just cutting costs. In fact, it can kind of have the opposite effect, especially if you're in a growth company. And I think it needs to be said that there's certainly some context here. What mode is your company in? Are you in a distressed cash strap mode where maybe you do need to be thinking about cutting costs? Are you in growth mode where you're investing? I think it's situational. You have to be aware of that, and that might vary by company, and that is going to dictate kind of how fiscal responsibility manifests itself. But let's use the growth mode as an example. I think making investments is really important, making the right investments, but also tracking those investments and demonstrating the return. A lot of times the investment's made, and the hard part is understanding really how did it perform, and then showing that performance as a result of building that personal brand. It's tricky. And then layer on top of that, like, how do you show that you're fiscally responsible? How do you build your personal brand without coming off arrogant? So there is, you're sort of threading a needle there. At Omaha Steaks, when I was first coming in as CIO, the company needed to spend money to level up its systems, get farther up the maturity curve, modernization curve. And the relationship between me and the CFO had not really been established because I was new. I was a new C-level leader. And so it really is in that moment that it was really critical for me to establish myself in the CFO's mind as someone that was cognizant of my cost basis. I understood my P&L. When I made an investment, it was thoughtful, and I tracked that investment through its life, and I demonstrated the returns, even if they were soft returns, to that finance organization. And so I built that reputation of being thoughtful about my P&L, of understanding where the money was flowing through IT, not just, kind of being irresponsible and knowing I got to spend all this money on technology because that's what people do, right? People spend money on technology. Well, I think it is really important in the eyes of the CFO and the eyes of the CEO for a technology leader to understand the value proposition of those investments. And so that personal brand got attached to me, which was, Nate, someone that, gets that when he spends money, he needs to demonstrate to us the value proposition. Nate understands his P&L. He knows what his labor base is. He's managing that. So when I went to the boardroom and we had executive level meetings and I needed resources, that personal brand, I was able to flex that muscle, and it was a much faster track to a yes because I had taken the time to prove myself as being a fiscally responsible person that brand shined through.
Yeah, and this happened with Farooq when you first took on the job. But I have to tell you, we're about to take a commercial break, and we're going to hear that story from Farooq when we come back. Back in a few. We'll get back to the show in just a minute. First, I want to talk about the holidays. To me, the holidays are magical, and nothing delivers that magic quite like that unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. Whether for business partners, employees, friends, family, Omaha Steaks is the perfect gift. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, you'll get an extra $35 off with promo code CEO. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience. And the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy for you to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated packages featuring gourmet favorites. For a limited time, get 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code CEO. That's 50% off omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with promo code CEO. Now that's magic. You are back on Brain of Command, and we're talking about fiscal responsibility, how it ties into your personal brand. So first, I'm going to tell you, I remember when I interviewed first Tony Hsieh. He was the CEO of Zappos, and he said, we didn't have the choice of being fiscally responsible. We had no money. So we couldn't advertise, we couldn't do anything. But what that does, it changed the personal brand of Tony and of everyone in the organization. And what they did is they started focusing on customer service. They said, that's the only thing we could do that doesn't cost us money. And they became known. Zappos took over the web as the number one customer service company on the web. So this is a big thing, how it impacts the brand. I want to talk from a personal standpoint now. Farooq, you are a young man. You are, I think, in your young 30s, and you're taking this iconic brand, Ethan Allen, and you're saying to them, I want to be president. I want to lead the company. Now, how did your fiscal responsibility tie into the personal brand? Because to me, it's all about one word, trust. And you engendered that trust. Talk about what that was like in getting the job first. And this was back some over 40 years ago.
Yes. Well, I was very fortunate that the fact I came with an entrepreneurial attitude. When I came to New York at age 20, I had never seen a calculator. So my first job was that of a bookkeeper, and I had to convince them that I was a bookkeeper, but I had never seen any books or a calculator. But anyway, I did. It was down near Wall Street. And it was only 3 or 4 years later that I became the chief financial officer of the Rothschild Company, a finance company. So you have to learn. You have to be very much of an entrepreneur. But while I was doing it, and I'm going to school at night, I was working on Wall Street, but I was also running my own entrepreneurial business of getting arts and crafts from Kashmir and selling them. So you had to be fiscally responsible. I was a student. I was running my own business. Then I started as a bookkeeper. Only a few years later, I became the chief financial officer while my studies were marketing. And it was at that time I met the founder of Ethan Allen. And he was informed that I was on part-time also selling some beautiful decorative accents from Kashmir. So I was introduced to him, and he said, we're having a lot of trouble getting fabrics from there. Can you help? I said, absolutely. Of course, I had no idea. but I got into the fabric business.
Really recently in our country's history, we had a pretty good example of the dichotomy between good fiscal responsibility and poor fiscal responsibility on the backside of COVID. There were many companies that way overextended themselves, whether that be, building distribution centers, taking huge positions on inventory, hiring way more team members than they needed. And they found themselves overextended. And in many cases, that did not allow businesses to continue. It was so intense. And so, in contrast, there were businesses that were very measured. They didn't overextend themselves. They captured the opportunity, but they didn't find themselves on the backside of that demand curve shrinking, not being able to survive. Omaha Steaks took a more measured approach. I've got friends and colleagues and other businesses that had a rougher go. How did Ethan Allen navigate that? And was it a fiscal responsibility approach there and how you got through that time period?
Our first focus was to make sure that we grow the business. Second, we manage our expenses. We had to get that message across to our team, all across the team. And fortunately, we were able to make major changes. We changed a lot of our product programs. We fine-tuned our manufacturing, but of course, we had to be extremely measured. We had a lot of debt. We had to be careful how we spend the money. And as we looked at our expenses. Everything was done from a base zero approach. And our team members did that. They became part of it. And you have to create a culture where people believe that, and then you got to reward them when things happen. So we rewarded our people when results were good. And the result was then in less than 5 years, we were able to pay off our debt and we became almost debt free. And for the last, I think, 30 plus years, we've had no debt. And we have been able to operate. But then you've got to make sure that you create a culture. And I use the word that we are entrepreneurial and disciplined. That's a culture you have to create. You have to be entrepreneurial and disciplined. There are a lot of businesses that are completely entrepreneurial and no discipline, and there are others who are just completely disciplined. Creating the balance of entrepreneurial and discipline is key to growing a business, to managing a business. It doesn't matter what it is, how big you are. So when you create that kind of a culture in an enterprise of being entrepreneurial and disciplined at all levels, the chances are that you're going to do well. And that's really the success, fortunately, of Ethan Allen.
So I have the final question for you, Farooq. The average tenure of a CEO is 7.2 years. You're past 37 years already, and you've never had a year of non-profitability under your leadership. What is the role of the concept of fiscal responsibility for you as a person, for your personal brand, and for your organization itself in keeping an incredible tenure that almost no one in America is able to do, over 35 years?
I run Ethan Allen as a sports team. That's why we don't buy other companies. It's one team, one program. We go from a concept of idea to design, to manufacture, to retail, to logistics. There's a disease, of course, is unfortunately that when you start thinking that you got to grow for the sake of growth, you're going to buy other companies, it wears you out. When you're running one team, and if you are fortunate to have good health, you can survive, you can stay a long time. If on the other hand, I think if you divert yourself into 10 different businesses, the chances are you may not last that long.
And there you have it. I want to thank you both, Farooq, and of course, my partner in crime, Nate. And we have been talking about fiscal responsibility. And number one, what we learned is that this is how you grow your personal brand. It's doing the right thing, but that brand extends to the whole company in what we heard about Ethan Allen and the great turnaround. And it expands into things like being entrepreneurial and disciplined and seeing yourself as one team, as one responsible sport team. And at the end of the day, the one word that fiscal responsibility leads to is trust. to become great CEOs and as CEOs to lead. See you next time.
When you take actions that demonstrate cost savings, don't just file it away. Share the win with stakeholders and highlight the impact on financial goals. This follow-through builds your personal brand as a fiscally responsible leader. For more on today's hack, download the free Brain of Command companion guide at omahasteaks.com/podcast. Join us next time to discover the right way to brag. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your colleagues that you're hacking your career with Brain of Command.